Hey folks, welcome to Roll of Law. It's been a while since I posted a video, so I wanted to give you guys an update as to some of the things I've been up to so you don't think I've just dropped off the planet. Of course, law's been keeping me busy, but I've also started work on a new game, a new tabletop role-playing game from basically scratch. So designing mechanics, designing a system, all of that stuff. And why would I do this? Well, because there's been things I've wanted to see in gaming for a while. This is something that's kind of an opportunity to try to make what I think is my ideal game and to share it with you guys. Now, this is going to be a huge endeavor. There's no guarantee it ever gets done, and it certainly won't be anytime soon, but I did want to share the ideas behind it with you, and also I'll just keep sharing how I go as things develop. So the idea behind this, one of the initial thoughts is I wanted a fantasy sort of dungeon crawler game, but I wanted to keep it really low magic. And that doesn't mean low magic in the universe. What I wanted is adventurers who still have to deal with some of the bog standard problems, where a chasm, for instance, if you got to cross a pit or a river, that's always going to be a challenge. And the main thing that stops that is wizards. So really, one of my design philosophies is no wizards. Now, that is a bit of a jump from most games, and when I say no wizards, because of how the setting works, there will still be wizards as opponents. So if you think of the sort of standard barbarian mythos of we've got to go out and, kill the wizard, that's still part of it. But there's not really going to be player character wizards. Instead, another sort of element of the philosophy on this one is that everyone is magic. Now, that doesn't mean that people are going to be casually casting spells, but I do want everyone to be involved in the magical elements. And so what that means is that when players are casting magic, it's going to be through long involved rituals. And those long involved rituals will have a variety of uses, but they're going to mean that everyone at the table is part of it. Everyone at the table has to play some role in it. And it's not just like, oh, I look up in my spell book and I cast Fireball. It's going to be a sort of mini sub-adventure, a kind of a mini game in the larger plot. So we first have no wizards, and then we next have everyone is magic as kind of design philosophies. I'm looking for something that's a bit of a darker vibe to it, a sort of grittier feel. And that's also facilitated by not being able to solve a lot of these problems. It's a fantasy world, but it's a fantasy world where you can't just make crops grow or necessarily, heal the sick through magic. All of that's going to be a little more problematic. The basic setting ideas are the idea I'm sort of running with at this point is essentially a world that has had sort of a cataclysm affect it. And the nature of this is that rifts to different worlds, most of which are pretty hostile to humanity, open up. And this is part of the philosophy of I wanted dungeon crawls. Because one of the things that these rifts tend to do, aside from letting in creatures that are probably pretty dangerous, is that they tend to shape the world around them. And so the dungeons will often be the result of a rift that is opened and has actually reshaped the world around it in sort of an ever-growing area as the rift gains strength, so that the dungeon itself is formed by the action of these rifts, which means that you end up with sort of dungeons that kind of make sense but don't necessarily have to, and in fact in some cases may be subject to very different rules. One of the places that these rifts frequently connect to is full of creatures and full of things that just don't follow standard physics or time or any of that. And so it might have very strange and off-putting kind of things to keep you off your guard, whereas others are sort of more corruptive forces or various other things. So I'm pretty excited about that. There's a number of ideas I have about things I want to try to change or try to fix, just try to make more interesting. I'm looking at using D6s, a group of D6s, as sort of the primary roles. And the reason why is because one of the things I'm looking for here is sort of a normal curve distribution. When you roll, D&D and lots of other games are based around sort of the D20 roll. Like you roll, and the thing about that is that a 1 and a 20 have exactly the same probability, as does, 17, 12, 13, etc. And that's fine. That works well for lots of things, but in actual practice, most things in the world actually sort of fall onto a normal curve where things in the middle, like the average result, the middling result, is far more likely to occur than the exceptional results. And so what this means is that if you need to roll a high number, it's going to have a much lower chance than, than if you needed a specific middle number. There's no reason why you'd ever need a specific number as opposed to better than, but as things get harder and harder up the chain, it's not linear. It's going to be sort of exponentially harder. Similarly, things that you're really good at may get to the point where you're almost guaranteed not to fail. And that has a few beneficial effects. It might allow for critical hit systems that don't have quite the same problems as you see in some games, although I could do a whole video on the problems with critical hit systems, so maybe I'll talk about that at some point. But yeah, I have a lot of ideas that I'm working with on this one, and it's going to be a fairly epic undertaking. I'm going to need to hire artists, I'm going to need to all of that stuff, and so that's a ways out. But I'm having fun playing with it at this point. I'm hoping that I can make it, bring it to market. One question that you might have, given that I've also been talking about the ELF license, which I can give a little mini update here. The ELF license is, I'm still working on it. I've been talking with the lawyers. I got a redlined version back. We're having some discussion back and forth to get to a perfect version. I've heard, or at least as good as we can. I don't know if perfect is possible, but we're trying to get to as good as we can. I've heard some criticisms of the draft, particularly around deattribution and reattribution, and I'm trying to get to a better solution on that and see if there's a way to make that work. And if not, we may have to cut those elements. But yeah, one of the questions people might have about Project Monolith, which will eventually take on a different name. Right now, it's just a working name. Is will that be released under ELF? And I can't say for certain. I do plan to release it under a license that allows for a lot of flexibility. That may not be the ELF, because I might actually want to release it under something that is more generous than ELF, that releases more of the content to the public than the ELF license would. So if I do that, I'll probably end up being like, here's the ELF license version. You can use that if you want, or you can use the more generous license. I might do dual licensing or that sort of thing. I don't know. At this stage, it's too early, but I do like the principles behind the ELF, and it will, like, whatever I do with it, I plan to keep those principles involved. Whether or not it actually uses the ELF license specifically is another question. Probably, however, I will say I will probably release it under ELF. Just no commitments here. Other things I wanted to talk about. Win Gimlet Silver is still ongoing, and that's a whole bunch of silver coins. So if you haven't sort of been following that, there's a contest where I'm trying to give away a number of silver coins, and real silver coins, so worth decent money. Now, part of the reason for that is that basically this is my for fun channel, and I'm not really looking to make money on it at this stage. Maybe that'll change, but right now I'm sort of running it as revenue neutral, as kind of a really rough accounting, and I'm not going to get this down to dollars. This channel's brought in about $2,000. There, that's about the rough amount. The silver is close to 500. So, we'll take 500 off of that. Legal fees, about 1,000. So, because of that, there's about 500 in wiggle room, which means that hopefully fairly soon I'm going to be announcing some sort of contest to give away that remaining money. Because one of the things that, like right now, I'm working on the elf license and I'm wanting to release that to the public. One of the criticisms people have had is, hey, you're just grifting. And this isn't really a grifting channel. I'm trying to keep this, my sort of idea for it was to just give stuff away as things happen. That may not be what I do forever, but for right now, it works just fine. And hopefully that'll defray some of those criticisms because I'm giving it back to you guys. That said, I'm having some trouble with ideas. So if there's something you guys think might be a good idea, I might give away, I'm thinking maybe dice, maybe role-playing game books. I also thought maybe I could give away a sword. I've done that before. All sorts of possibilities. If there's stuff that you think would be fun to receive, let me know in the comments below because there will be a contest. I can also tell you this contest, this giveaway will be less hard than Gimlet Silver. This is a classic example of learning that puzzles can be too challenging. But I do hope you guys keep at it because I'm going to keep giving hints, which may get more and more obvious over time. And I'm hoping that one of you wins the prize so that I can get it out of my house. Anyway, that's kind of the state of things. Let me know in the comments below if you have any thoughts, any sort of questions or concerns. But yeah, I just wanted to do sort of an update. I'm really excited about working on Project Monolith right now, as well as working on the Elf license. These are both things that I'm hoping other people can enjoy. So I'm going to keep at it. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me. See you next time.